It's Drew Tessier's mostly queer comedy show. Let's talk, y'all.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Drew Tessier's Mostly Queer Comedy Podcast. I'm here today with Sonny LaPrade. Sonny was a finalist for this year's New York Queer Comedy Festival, and so fucking funny. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
Now, when did you... Because you're young.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 23.
Wow. Young enough that she'll still say her age on television. And you started super young.
Yeah, I started at 15.
And you started before you transitioned.
Yeah, so I started doing stand-up as a 15-year-old straight boy, which is the worst demographic to do stand-up. I come from a town of like less than 1,000 people, and there's a college in it. So one of my friends' dads was like the director of student activities. So they needed opening comics for the visiting comics that would come to the college, and they knew that I was interested in doing stand-up. So that's how I got my start, was by opening for people who came to the college.
That's crazy. I mean, so were there any opportunities for like open mics in that area, or?
No, not really.
So you cut your teeth as an opening act for Road Comics.
Yeah, my first ever show was opening for Ben Rosenfeld.
Okay, so that I was trying to remember. I knew that there was a comic that had mentioned your name to me, and he said, I met her the first time she did comedy, and it was Ben, because Ben's a house comic at Broadway in Greenwich, and oh, that's wild. So
Yeah.
he was just up there doing a show for the college.
Yep, and I did 10 minutes to open.
How'd it go?
Honestly, pretty well. I rewatched it recently, and like, there are a couple jokes in there that I do stand by.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine you doing comedy without referencing, like how a pre-Sunny. What was your, well, okay. But, I mean, a pre-Sunny set, I can't even imagine it.
It was, so a lot of my stuff before I came out, so I had like the timeline of like, I came out as like bisexual at 18, non-binary at 19, a woman at like 20, and then a lesbian at like 21.
And the one thing you were certain of was no sex with men.
No sex with men. But so when I was like younger, all of my jokes were like, I think I'm gay, but maybe not.
Interesting, because I run a bunch of open mics in New York, and I find that one of the most common premises is people think I'm gay, but I'm not gay. And it's never even crossed my mind that I wonder if any of them are harboring some trans shit. That's fascinating.
It wasn't even like people think I'm gay. It was like, I think I'm gay.
Right.
It was like, I think I'm gay, but I'm in like a homophobic area, so I don't get to like talk about it in any context where people will take me seriously. But if I do it as a joke, I get to get it out without like answering questions the next day at school.
So anything like, as a little girl, like shoes, trying not like anything, or really going all out at Halloween. I mean, what was sort of the process?
Yeah. So, did you have Spirit Week at your school?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we would have like dress up days for Spirit Week, and I remember I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and I went home, and the day was formal day. And my friends and I were all like, it would be so funny if we showed up in women's formal wear, wouldn't it? And then I went home and I talked to my mom, and I was like, I'm doing it. And I made her like give me one of her dresses and a scarf, and I made her do my makeup, and we straightened my hair. And then I got to school, and I was the only person who had followed through. So everyone called me a faggot, and I had like a horrible day at school. And I remember being like, well, never doing that again. And it's one of those things where it's like, before anyone else saw me doing that, I was like, this shit rocks. Like, I feel great, and I can't like put my finger on why. And then like I dealt with like other people, and I was like, actually, this is terrible, and I'm never gonna do this again. And then I didn't really experiment with stuff that was that femme until like, honestly, until I came out. Because I came out as like bisexual, and I never really put that to the test, but I did paint my nails an awful lot.
Okay. Well.
And then like, yeah, I came out as non-binary and was still like just painting my nails, and then eventually started getting into makeup, and like got my ears pierced and getting into women's clothes, and I started growing my hair out, and I dyed it purple for some reason. But like I'm still like not the world's biggest like dress in high heels type of girl, so that was never really like my vibe.
Interesting. And I mean, you do a lot of material about sort of the period of living with a girlfriend, breaking up with the girlfriend, still living with a girl. But you guys, I guess you sort of started with an open relationship first. Is that
No, so we started dating as a straight couple. She met me as like a straight cisgendered boy, and we had like a very monogamous heterosexual relationship. And then like I came out as bisexual, and she was supportive because she was from Brooklyn. And then like I came out as non-binary, and I remember I like told her, she was the first person I told, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm non-binary, and she said okay, and then went to bed, and like that was like kind of all we talked about it. And I remember later being like, that was like kind of like a big moment for me. I could have
Right.
used more of a reaction. And she said, "Ugh, what? Like you wanted me to celebrate you or something?" And I was like maybe, maybe a little. So we continued to date. I like transitioned. We were still dating, and then we opened the relationship. Probably like 6 months before we broke up. A classic.
soft fight or quitting your relationship?
Right. I'm like, if your relationship starts open, that's valid. If you're multiple years in and you suddenly open it, just break up.
Well, that's all. We could go for hours.
I hit a nerve. I hit a nerve.
All right. No. That is live your truth, Sonny. So the first time now I've seen you do comedy a lot. I've seen you do it in New York. I mean, now I've seen you because you've been on several of my shows. We have a show coming up together. But I think the first time you really caught my attention was the Pensacola Queer Comedy Festival. And I mean, there were lots of shows, as comedy festivals often are. There were lots of venues, there were lots of shows, there were lots of time of day. But this was like a bright light, middle of the day bar show where you crushed down there. And, there's lots of things we could say about the Pensacola Queer Comedy Festival experience. But that was what really kind of grabbed my attention about what a great comic you are.
Thank you. I appreciate
I
that.
assume you're not planning to go back to the Pensacola Comedy Festival this year.
No, so I bought my tickets pretty much as soon as I learned that I was in the festival, because I was like, they're only going to get more expensive as we get closer. And then by the time the festival happened, there were all these things being like travel advisories, being like, if you are transgender, do not go to Florida. Even if you're just there to visit, if you are living in Florida, get out of Florida.
I mean, that's on bumper stickers down there. I think.
Yeah. And so I was like, I was really worried about it, but I couldn't cancel my tickets because I had spent too much money, and like I had already committed to an Airbnb with people. But so I called my estranged father because my mom was like out of the country, and I was like, hey, if I do get arrested while I'm down there, you're gonna be the person that I call. And then I gave him a list of like people to contact, because he's like one of the only numbers I have memorized.
Sure.
You know? And then I gave him a list of people to contact, and I was like, these people will know what to do. You just have to tell them what's happening, and like they will be able to raise money for me to get bail or whatever. I was like so nervous about it. So not going back.
Yeah, and I mean that's not even speaking at all to the festival. I mean, this is just Florida. It was such an interesting experience all the way around, because of their dickbag governor and, the politics down there. I would rather not spend money in Florida at all.
Yeah.
Given the choice. So that was sort of my thing, but then there's the other side, which is like, if any place needs to be trying to celebrate queer art and somebody's doing it in Florida, I do want to go and support that. And I'm from the South. I somehow did not know this growing up, but apparently Memorial Day weekend used to be a huge gay gathering in Pensacola.
Yeah, it was the first Pride gathering in the state, I think is what they said when we were there.
Which is fascinating to me. I mean, and it was under my nose all those. I never went. So when I went for the festival to Pensacola was actually definitely the first time I went for Memorial Day weekend. Maybe the first time I ever went to Pensacola. I mean, if we went to the beach when I was growing up, it was usually Panama City. Sorry, it just was. Our options were limited. But I'd never actually been to Pensacola. And what was interesting is how I felt like people of Pensacola were really going out of their way to try to welcome us.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really nervous going there. And then I got there and pretty quickly was like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Because it was like I got to the beach and there was like, oh, like topless lesbian oil wrestling. And also like one of those things where it's like, listen, if like Ron DeSantis starts rounding us up, they are going to start with any of the thousands of twinks with thongs and not like the girl in swim shorts, you know?
I didn't see a ton of Now, I never. So, did you go down? We were kind of on a more quiet part of the beach. So, you went down to sort of ground zero. Where
I
all
walked the whole length. And so you start at like
Joe's Crab Shack or whatever the
yeah,
hell.
you start at the like twink section of the beach, and then you go to the bear section of the beach, and then if you walk past that, it's the lesbian section of the beach.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed out on all that. I was there. I was sharing Airbnb with my boyfriend and with Bobby Hankinson, and it was so funny because we got there, and the Airbnb we were staying was fine. The Airbnb was lovely. If you stayed within like our block area, it was lovely. You didn't want to stroll too far, in any direction into the neighborhood. But we went to a grocery store to pick up some food, and we're clockable. It was me and Bobby and my boyfriend. So walking through a grocery store, and we walked outside, and this woman who worked there, who I assume is an older lesbian, came running out to basically like greet us and be like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you guys came, and it used to be a much bigger deal down here, but less and less people come each year, and we're just so glad to have y'all." And that's the complicated part with the South is people are so fucking nice, except for the ones who aren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're the ones in charge generally.
And like I have found with everywhere that I've gone that like most people kind of just don't give a shit about gay people. They're like, do whatever the fuck you want. It's just like the policy makers who care. But on the way out of Pensacola, I was going through the TSA, and like the TSA machines.
You talk about this on stage,
I talk
right?
about this on stage, yeah. No matter what you do, if you are a transgender person, you are going to get a pat down at TSA because they will either think that your boobs or your dick is a bomb.
Not the bomb.
Not the bomb, a bomb. And so there was this like older Floridian woman who was working the TSA, and I called her over and I was like, hey, like, just so you know, like, I'm going to set off your machine because I am transgender. And she was really sweet, and she was like, oh, thank you for telling me, and then scanned it, and she was like, would you rather have a man or a woman pat you down? And I was like, oh, a woman, please. She gave me a pat down, and she was like, I'm so sorry about that. I hope you make it home safe. And was like, very sweet. And it was one of those things where it's like, the people, for the most part, are pretty chill with, like, at least interpersonal interactions. The way they vote, maybe not. But, like...
Do you dread flying in general, or...?
Yeah, big time. New York has different scanners, so I don't get clocked there. But anywhere else, and, like, I do a lot of shows in the South or in, like, rural places, so I'm flying out of, like, weird little airports. And sometimes... And I've found that it's always easier for me to tell them first before I go through their scanner, like, hey, I'm transgender, I'm gonna set it off. It just makes it less of an uncomfortable surprise for everyone when they grab my junk. And, like, I have found that is... There are certain people who get real uncomfortable with it, but everyone kind of appreciates that I've let them know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what else you gonna do? When... I'm trying to think where I want to go from here. When did you start full-time living in New York City?
Full-time, I started living here in probably like June of 2022. But when I was growing up, my parents were long distance, and one of them lived here. So I've been in and out of the city since I was born in Manhattan. So I've been in and out forever.
When this will be interesting for you. What when you were a little girl? What what comics most spoke to you?
Okay, my top three when I was really getting into stand up were Hannibal Buress, Aziz Ansari, and John Mulaney.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All
And
men.
all men. All men. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even. It was like I would listen to the stand up comedy radio station on Pandora, and there just like weren't a lot of women comics who were popping up then, other
Just
than like it was like men and Natasha
I
Leggero.
was gonna say Rita Rutner.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what was sort of your evolution with social media? I guess both with, because you're young. What was Instagram the first social media platform that you were on, or?
I mean, it depends on whether or not you count Snapchat as social media.
Oh, so that's interesting. So Snapchat was the first thing.
Yeah, I'm like an only child of like Gen X boomer cusp parents.
Okay.
So, like, my parents were born in '64, I think. And so, like, I was pretty heavily and especially because we would go back and forth between New York and upstate. And then when I was here, I would be here for the summers because we would be staying with my dad, which meant that I would be in the summer alone because I didn't like have friends here or at least not a lot because I wasn't like going to school here. So I spent like a lot of time with my parents, and so a lot of their opinions just became my opinions, and they had a particular disdain for social media.
Oh, they don't sound all bad.
So I didn't get on Instagram until I was like 16. And then that was only at like the behest of my friends, and we had gotten so many lectures about like internet safety at my school that I was really paranoid about it, so I used a fake name online. So for years I was Samuel E. Pans online, and it's still like some of my stuff somewhere. And so occasionally, like, people always think that Sam is my dead name, which it isn't. But it's very funny that it throws them off the scent.
So were you posting any material online before you came out?
So I like.
Because you were doing comedy before you came out. But
Yeah. I don't think I was posting material. I was posting lots of like pictures of me doing that, but I didn't start really posting online until 2021.
so mainly TikTok or
Yeah, so I started doing stand up in 2015. And then I figured like, okay, I knew I was going to move to New York. I was living in Amherst, Massachusetts at the time. And I was like, okay, I know that I want to do stand up as my thing. And I know that I want to move to New York. And so I'm going to have some kind of portfolio, some kind of proof to be like, I am funny. Don't just take my word for it. Here's
Right.
some numbers. And so I was taking a bunch of classes on like politics in the age of the internet. So we talked a lot about like the social media algorithms, and the more I read about them, the more I was like, that actually doesn't sound that hard. It just sounds like you just learn the system and then you do that. And so it was winter break of I think my junior year of college, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna go home and I'm going to just start. I couldn't go to open mics because COVID was still happening. And also there weren't a ton of open mics happening in the area that I was at the time. And so I was like, I'm just going to post my material direct to camera. And I want to be able to join the creator fund so I can start making money by the time I get back to school. So I had like 1 month for winter break to hit 10,000 followers. And the day that I got back to school, I hit 10K. And so then I would spend like an hour to 2 hours every day in my room writing and recording material and then posting it online. I used to post 3 times a day every day. And then anytime something would do any kind of numbers, I would be like, okay, that's usable. And I would write it into a more well thought out joke. And then if something tanked, I would abandon the concept and move on.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you're actually going in reverse order from what I think, which is you test something on stage and then decide to put it online. But you're saying you test it sort of, or at that period, test it online and then decide if it's going to go into your act.
Yeah, because I always wanted to be like, I want stand-up comic to be my first thing.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be like, you know this girl from Instagram, and also she does comedy. And so I was like, social media was just a means to an end. So I was like, I don't care. When you post something on TikTok, it goes off into the ether.
Right.
It doesn't, there's no like actual consequences like that. Whereas when you bomb on stage in real life, it feels bad. So
See, that still feels counterintuitive to me because I think if you have one bad show, fuck it, who cares? You're gonna, have another one that night or the next day or whatever. But I feel like something goes bad online, then it is out there forever. But
yeah, well, I've learned that the hard way
Yeah.
recently. But
So what was the first thing that just really went super viral for you?
I talked about how growing up in my hometown, it was so small that we only had one street light, like traffic light, and it was put in while I was alive, and we had a festival to celebrate
The new streetlight.
the fact that we got a street light, and then we would have a festival on the anniversary of us getting the street light to celebrate us getting the street light. Wow. And so I was talking about that, and it went viral, and then I did a bunch of like, I'm from a small town stuff for a while, and that was my thing, and then I moved on from there.
And then when did the hate start?
So I was out as non-binary when I first started doing it, which means that I had short hair and didn't know how to do my makeup, but tried anyways. And like, the hate wasn't really that bad until like probably summer 2021.
There was a lot of hate that summer anyway.
There was a lot of hate that summer just going around. And I posted a video. I had gotten acrylics for the first time. And when I got them, my middle and index finger acrylics fell off first. And so I posted a joke to the internet being like, people are so quick to be like, trans women can't be lesbians, but look at my hands and tell me that I'm not a lesbian because I had the fingering fingers with short nails. And I like started getting a lot of hate comments on it in like Spanish and Russian. And like, I don't speak Russian. I don't speak Spanish, but I took it in high school enough to know like what no eres mujer means,
Right.
And so I was like, that's odd. I wonder why it's getting that traction. And then I got a DM one day that was like, hey, I don't know if you saw this, but a lot of people are like using this video. And somebody had downloaded it and posted it to Twitter.
Right.
And by the time I saw it, it had 250,000 likes, which is the most viral I had gone on Twitter at the time, which is annoying. I only ever go viral on Twitter when it's bad.
Oh, God. And that was like on a Libs of TikTok or something?
It wasn't
like
Libs of TikTok. It was just like a random account that was being transphobic. I did get posted on Libs of TikTok like last year. But yeah, it just, that kicked it off. And then it was like dormant for a while, and then it was like, oh, every once in a while like a video would reach the wrong people, and I would get some hate. But then once I got posted on Libs of TikTok, I then like very quickly got posted on PragerU, and then on the Daily Wire, and then on Blair White, and like now it's at the point where like they have found me, so like no matter what I post, it's so much more likely to reach the wrong people because I'm already being like monitored by those accounts. So I don't really post online that much. I used to post multiple times a day, every day. And now I post like maybe once a month if I'm doing well, just because it's like I already have impressive numbers, so it's not like me going from 250,000 to like 275,000 followers is going to make that big of a difference.
Right.
So I'm just like, it's not worth it to receive that much hate and like potentially put myself in actual danger to continue posting my stupid little jokes online.
Because you are currently, or at least at one point, correct me either way, the second most followed trans woman comic.
Yeah, in the world. I was number one before Eddie Izzard changed her name and came out. Eddie Susie Izzard, and then, I mean, like now, like Dylan Mulvaney did a show at the Stand recently. So I'm like, if we're counting her, then I'm third. But yeah, Stacey K is catching up to me. But
Especially if you're not posting much.
especially if I'm not
Yeah.
posting much, yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Izzard's interesting because if I were to name my three most influential comics, Eddie Izzard's up there. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen Dressed to Kill 100 million bajillion times, and it's been interesting to see her transition, so to speak. Because she used to use the word transvestite. I mean,
Yeah.
that was her. I'm an executive transvestite. I mean,
Yep.
that was. So it is interesting that she considers herself fully trans at this point.
Yeah, I saw the remix tour when she
That
came
wa-
to New
here,
York.
right here,
Right
And-
here.
Yeah, I saw. We went to that. Yeah,
Yeah, super fun.
right here being the Upper West Side.
The Upper West
but
Side,
like
yeah.
literally like 2 blocks that way.
It was really interesting watching it and seeing how stylistically comedy has changed, because like she did 2 hours of stand up and
Lot
there
of
were
animal jokes.
there were like 10 punchlines
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing, and it was funny. I laughed, and like she brought the house down, but
And she had pigtails that were fabulous.
and she had pigtails that were fabulous. But it's like if you tried to do what she did on stage right now, people would be like, "What are you? What
You
the
mean
fuck
if
are
you weren't
doing?"
already famous going in?
Yeah, if you weren't already famous, like if I went to the industry room and I did a 5-minute set about fruit flies with no actual punchlines, and it was just impressions, and it was funny,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like set up punchline, they would be like, yeah, come back when you know how to write a joke.
Interesting. I laughed my ass off.
I
that
laugh my
night,
ass off. This is
yeah.
not me shit talking.
Yeah.
This is not me shit talking her. It's more just being like, when you watch comedy from that time, like the expectations of how many punchlines per minute or whatever, or like the density of the jokes, the expectations were lower.
I think that's something that's very interesting about the New York comedy scene in general. You know, that yes, we have more opportunity than anywhere in the world to get on stage every single night. I mean, it's like AA. There is a show happening every minute of every day somewhere.
And someone's going to cry.
Someone's going to cry. But, we do, because there are so many comics, you see more showcase style shows, which is 6-minute set or 5-minute sets, 7-minute sets, 10-minute sets. And I push it really hard in all of my open mics, set up, punchline, set up, punchline, because you've got such a short amount of time. So people that I do think fall more into a long storytelling format, it's hard to get that going quickly.
Yeah.
But you've got to prove yourself before you get to the place where somebody's going to let you do a 20-minute set.
No, so I think about this a lot. Stand-up is one of the few things that gets easier as you progress. Where it's like the hardest stand-up will ever be is when you are first starting out. Because no one has faith that you're funny already. No one gives you the benefit of the doubt about that stuff. And you are going up in front of the worst audiences. Like you're going up at open mics where it's just comics who have been doing open mics, all day. So like no one wants to laugh. No one is like on each other's team. And meanwhile, like when you do a paid show where like people have paid money to get tickets to see you, or even just to see a showcase, like those are people who are there explicitly to laugh and have a good time, not because they're there to like workshop their craft or do a job. And so like I think that a lot of people quit really early on because open micing sucks.
Oh yeah. I mean, and this is part of why I love doing open mics, is when
Yeah.
I was coming through there was one open mic that I really did like, but I was not getting anything out of open mics.
No,
And
they're horrible. Some of the worst experiences I've had, like period, have been at open mics. And then meanwhile, like at venues that decide to give me more time, at places that give me an hour or give me 90 minutes or give me a half hour or even 20 minutes, it's like I have so much more space to play around. And because of that, like I can slow down the pacing a lot. Because if you just do set up punchline, set up punchline, set up punchline, like the trick that people have for writing jokes is like biggest punchline in the fewest amount of words possible.
Right.
And if you do that for an hour, people zone out after 15 minutes because it's too much for their brain to handle. So if you're doing an hour, it's actually it's an entirely different beast where you have to like stretch things out and make the pacing a lot slower and have things be more cohesive to tie people in and keep them interested throughout the entire arc of the story. But you're actively discouraged from doing that in mics where it's like, it's not about the arc of the story. That doesn't matter when you're only doing 5 minutes. It's just about how many laughs can you fit in this space as possible.
Right. I mean, I think I've got the way I've been recently laying out my material is, I could do a 5-minute bit that could also be 30 minutes. And basically, it just depends. Am I just hitting the punchlines from that, or am I doing the full stretched out kind of 8-minute versions of each of those jokes? Have you ever, I do want to stay on sort of the open mic thing for a second, because I do think society has changed a great deal in a short amount of time, particularly where we're at. I mean, I know that, it's not the same universally, but we are in New York. Comedy has changed a great deal in a short amount of time. But, open mics can be intimidating for anyone, but particularly queer people. And I think a lot of open mics, and now there's sort of the whole discussion of more niche open mics, that are for women and queer people, and then some of the bro comics get pissed sometimes because they're like, well, that's not giving you a real comedy experience. But at least being able to run a set, just to hear the words once or twice before, then we can throw in the, people who hate me, aspect of it. But I mean, have you ever had a situation in a show that's completely shut you down, or have you ever dealt with anything one-on-one with real nasty?
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of the open mics. Shout out. And those are because like when you're first getting to a new city and you're doing mics and you don't really know anyone,
right,
you just Google like open mics New York City, and that's what comes up. And so I was doing those mics, and it was full of truly the saddest, oldest, straightest men of all time. And like I would go to those mics, and I was like, I cannot stress this enough. I was clocky. I was like struggling, going through some shit where it was like I was trans femme, but I had really short hair. I hadn't started medically transitioning at all. I like wasn't shaving my legs. I didn't know how to do my makeup. So I was just like a mess. And I would go to these rooms full of these men, and like people would just like use me for like crowd work, where they would just harass me every time. And I'm also like, an open mic is not the place to fucking do crowd work. But yeah, people would just get on stage and like harass me. And I remember there was this one guy who went up and he said, yeah, maybe trans women are women, but it was maybe you're a woman, but you're an ugly woman. Couldn't you at least put on a little makeup? And then he started asking everyone in the crowd. He's like, I wouldn't fuck her. Would you? Would you? Would you? And like people were like, of course, which is like supportive, I guess. But I'm also like, yeah, like I didn't want to know who in the crowd wanted to smash or not. And so I heckled him, which I never fucking do, especially at an open mic, but he was being a dick. And so I was like, listen, man, like I wouldn't have slept with you anyways. I only sleep with funny people. And he got really mad and he like walked off. And then I would see him at that same mic every week. And after that, he would get up on stage and he would like aggressively hit on me. And so like, and it was one of those things where it was like, you know, people in the room for the most part were on my side, I guess. But then we would leave the mic and everyone would hang out with that guy. You know, everyone would be smoking together. And so then it's like, if I want to make connections with other comics, I now have to be in a space where I'm hanging out with this dude who was shitty to me and now is trying to fuck me.
It's like high school.
Yeah, it's like he was a bigger dude. So like explicitly the reason wherever I go, I always have my little pepper spray on me, and I explicitly started doing that.
I love that. Please hold that up again. I love the dichotomy of a carabiner and a pink pepper spray.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything to better sort of. If you need an icon to represent you.
Yeah, my whole vibe is the pink, the powder pink pepper spray with the bottle opener on the carabiner. That I explicitly started carrying pepper spray because of experiences that I had at open mics. It's just like, and so my advice for anyone who's trying to like get into comedy, especially if you are part of any like marginalized group, is like, sure, go to whatever open mic you can find, but then find one or two people whose material you like, or even just who you would be like, I would hang out with this person, and go up to them and ask them what their favorite open mics are. And then you go to those open mics and you do the same thing until you find yourself in a room of like people you can tolerate. And it doesn't even have to be like, I don't really do a ton of explicitly queer mics, but all of the mics I do are queer friendly because I like went through that process.
And I'm going to make it easier for you. Just come to my open mics.
Yes.
And I don't run any. I mean, I've run the New York Queer Comedy Festival, so obviously I am very pro, kind of keeping a queer space for us to be able to come together and fucking do our own thing and without outside eyes. But I like a mixed open mic. Now I do go to other queer mics from time to time if I do go to other mics, but I don't. Sometimes kind of an all queer mic is as counterproductive as an all bro mic. I mean, I kind of really like to get a real good mix of women and the bros. That if they can hang in my room, then I just think it sort of adds to the plot.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I like a supportive environment.
And I do think that there's something like, okay, I love all queer spaces. My heart is in my community, and also like, I am not trying to be a good queer comic. I am trying to be the best comic. And like, because of that, I think that there's something that's like a little bit of a double-edged sword about doing only queer rooms, where it's like, yeah, it's great that you get all that support and that you can spend time with your community, and also straight people are the people with the money and the power, and that like sucks, but that is the way that it is.
Well,
and
that's
so,
art and commerce. I mean, that's always been sort of the.
And so you have to be able to like, you don't have to pander to straight people, but you have to be able to get straight people on board. And I get really frustrated when I get pigeonholed as a queer comic,
Right.
because it's like, I am a comic who is queer, but I consistently go to like even conservative places with like rooms that are just straight people, and I crush because I am like a good comedian,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I guess I'll go the other way too. Have you ever gotten any flack from more progressive comics for a joke that they found either transphobic or?
Yeah, yes. I went to like truly the most hyper liberal school of all time. And for college.
Where's
and
that?
Hampshire College.
Okay.
No tests, no grades, no majors, no education. And I ran like a comedy writing workshop there.
Not only was I a student, I was a professor.
Yes, exactly. I TA'd a bunch of comedy classes, like I was involved. And a lot of the stuff was like, people would do edgier material that would be fine, but I would have to pull them aside and be like, listen, like, you have to know your audience, and that is not going to play here. And like, if you want to keep doing that joke outside of here, that's fine. But if you do it here, not only are you going to bomb, but like less people are going to come to our next show. And so I had a couple jokes where like,
I've heard you tell a couple that I've thought to myself, like, I bet she can't tell that in Brooklyn.
and yet I do. They don't go over as well, but I tell them. No, but like I've had a joke about 9/11 that I wrote when I was 16 years old that I still tell. And the first time I said it, someone came up to me and was like, that was kind of funny, but that 9/11 joke did not make me proud to call you my friend. And then I started doing it in the city, and I had some people come up to me and be like, you can't joke about that. And then, like, I had, like, when I was at college, people were like, like a tragedy of that scale, like, I don't know if it's worth it for you to talk about.
Yet, how many Holocaust jokes are there out there? I mean, it's...
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I think when something is, like, edgy or offensive, there's like I picture like a graph in my head where one of the axes is like how funny is it, and one of it is like how offensive is it. And the more offensive you get, the funnier it baseline has to be, because you can't take a huge offensive swing on a 3 out of 10 joke.
Right.
You will fucking lose the crowd so fast. The only way that you are truly able to get really edgy and have like good results is if your writing is like perfect. So yeah, I think that I have no issue with edgy stuff. I've gotten my fair share of pushback from literally everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got just about every side trying to tell you how to do comedy.
Yeah, but like it's fine to do edgy stuff. It's just you gotta be more careful because it has to be worth it.
Interesting. So we talked earlier, you moved to New York to live with your girlfriend. You all broke up. Mm-hmm. Then you lived together for...
8.5 months. 8.5 months post-breakup.
Some of my most favorite material is during that time you died, when I think you were just really hanging on by a thread.
Truly my most unhinged period, yeah.
You're no longer living with her.
No.
Are you two still friends?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So are you now living alone? You have a new roommate?
Well, so I was, and I feel so bad about this, I was living with her and also 2 other people. So there was 4 of us, and we were all mutual friends. And then we had the biggest, nastiest, messiest breakup in the history of the world.
Well, that's what you do at 21 years old. I mean,
that's... yeah, and then we continued to live together. She moved out. One of my other roommates moved out. So now I have like one of my original roommates, and then someone I went to elementary, middle, and high school with, and someone that they went to college with. So we're all friends, but different people. None of them I am dating.
And while you guys were still living together, she was bringing men home.
Oh, just one man.
The one with the towel.
Yeah, the one with the towel. Yep. A very effeminate man. And there's nothing wrong with being an effeminate man, but she does have a type, I'm like, that's how she got me, is that, like, when we first started dating, we were in the same friend group, and a lot of people didn't know because they just assumed that I was gay.
Right.
Because they were like, well, Sunny wears pink cut-off crop tops and high-waisted pants every day. There's no way that person is into women. And I was like, no, I'm just like that for some reason.
Fascinating. And it's interesting, how many trans people I know that date women and how many that date men. I mean, it is interesting that there seems to be almost a 50-50, or bisexual. I mean,
yeah.
It's fascinating. Everything's just all over the place, sexuality and gender-wise.
Yeah. I mean, like, I am not gonna, like, change my whole gender and then, like, suddenly pretend like it's all super real. I'm a lesbian because that is the word that most accurately describes me and my general vibe. But today, yeah, right. But I'm like, listen, if like one day I suddenly start finding men hot, I'm not gonna be like, I can't do that. I'm a lesbian. I'm like, all of it's fake anyways.
Right.
I'm gonna fuck whoever fucks me good,
I love that. So we have a show coming up together April 3rd, 7:30 p.m. at Greenwich Village Comedy Club. Remind me who all is on that lineup.
Oh man, it's a great lineup. We have Clara Olshansky, Rylan Mills, Sereni Wirasakara, Dorian DeBose, Benny Feldman, Gigi Generally,
The whole Hee Haw gang.
the whole Hee Haw gang. You and Tessa, obviously. I think that might be it.
Yeah. So 7:30, Greenwich Village Comedy Club. I run a queer show every week, but this week it's going to be Sunny and Friends. Come out and see us.
So you can find me online anywhere at Sunny L Comedy. That's Sunny like the weather, not like what Italian people call their sons. And I have a stand-up special called Queer Enough that you can stream for free on YouTube.
Sweet. This was fun. I really got to, I feel
Yeah.
like I got to know you more today, which I guess is the idea of this. I'm sure they did as well. We will see you next time, y'all. Thanks so much.
Bye.
It's Drew Tessier's mostly queer comedy show.